Okay, so rookie camp doesn't open for another month, and training camp for about 5 weeks. Screw it. Let's talk about some rosters, and how I see it going. Couple things, before I get into this. One, I don't have Jesse Puljujärvi anywhere in the lineup because I think he's getting traded or going to Europe. Obviously, I hope that he goes to Europe and doesn't get traded because, that would be really poor asset management. Now obviously, a lot of people want Pool Party gone. And there's a few people who I know will be watching this that will want Pool Party gone. I don't know. I think if he gets his head screwed on right, fires his agent, gets one who's actually there to help, to help Jesse, it'll be a good thing, And if he develops into what the Oilers thought he was going to be thought he was going to be when we drafted him, there's really no downside to letting him, grow up off the ice, learn English, learn how to play the game, the American way. There's really no downside to letting him go to Europe for a year. I have 3 former Condors making the Oilers, one of which is pretty obvious given the way he played last year. A couple of them are unlikely scenarios, but they're ones I want to happen. So, my video, my lineup. If you don't like it, deal with it or make your own. So after that lovely jump cut, the last thing is kind of like what I said, and I think it was the Vinny Desharnais, Anthony Peluso video. I don't want to hear you guys get on me about, oh, guys only played on the left or only played on the right. These guys are professional hockey players. I'm pretty sure they can adjust going from one side to the other. I also don't know what qualifies as, oh, this guy is a left defenseman or this guy's a right defenseman. They're defensemen to me. They flip sides all the time. So, we're going to start with the NHL and then come down to the AHL. Because, to me, the Condors roster is more interesting. There's more flexibility that can happen there. So, your top line NHL is Joakim Nygård with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And I'm going left to right. So, this line I put together because, one, holy crap, Batman, you want to talk about speed. Like, that is a fast first line. In terms of pure, unadulterated speed, I would probably put that up against any lineup, any line in the NHL, with the exception of a line that I saw Mike Babcock put together in Toronto, which, ooh, boy, it's really fast, of Andreas Johnsson, Austin Matthews, Kasperi Kapanen. That's some uh-oh speed. Kind of like how Besser has that shot where, he gets the puck on his stick and you're like, uh-oh, bad things are going to happen. That lineup, of Johnsson, Matthews, Kapanen has that. But I also think that, this line, with Nygård, McDavid, and Dry has that uh-oh speed. And given that that's the identity that it seems like Ken Holland and Dave Tippett are trying to go for, there's really no downside to at least trying it. Your second line, I put together because it sort of, it makes the top six better, but it also kind of spreads the offense out a little bit. I have Alex Chiasson with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and James Neal. Now, Chiasson and Neal, they both kind of have something to prove this year. Chiasson is because, he undoubtedly heard the trade rumors, last year at the deadline that we were going to flip him for, something. So he probably wants to prove that that was that wasn't a mistake to trade him at the deadline for a pick. And Neal, well, do we really need to get into why he's got something to prove? Last year was just a dog pile of a year for him. And people expect him to get back to, what he was with the Stars and the Penguins and the start of his career in Nashville. Well, I don't think he gets back to that. I think he hovers a little bit closer to what he was 2 years ago with Vegas and 3 years ago with Nashville when they went to the Cup. If he pots 10, 15 goals and 35, 40, 45 points, I'll take it. Anything is an improvement on last year for him. Your third line, kind of going like with what Chiasson and Neal are. This is the I've got something to prove line. This is the prime example of three guys who have something to prove. Michael Granlund, Colby Cave, and Zach Kassian. Granlund has something to prove because, well, he's the new guy. He's one of the new guys on the team, and he wants to make Ken Holland look like he knew what he was doing. And maybe get a better deal next year. Pretty sure it's a 1-year deal for him. And then Cave, he's looking to stay in the lineup, looking to, maybe get top 6 minutes. Everyone's looking to play on the top line, but, still. And then Zach Kassian is looking to prove that, I think it was 2 years ago now, when the Oilers went to the playoffs, he's looking to prove that Zach Kassian is still, alive and kicking. Because I would argue he was the best player in that playoff run. He had fire, and he seemed to play angry, which I've always thought worked well for him. So he's looking to prove that he's still that guy. Instead of, just a passive power forward. And then your fourth line is Kyle Brodziak with Sam Gagner and Josh Archibald. Now, I put this line together based on positional flexibility, because I'm pretty sure all three of them can, play all three positions. I know Brodziak and Gagner can play wing and center because they did last year. Archibald, I'm 99% sure he's played center before, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's still, that flexibility of Gagner and Brodziak. And then your depth players for the forwards are, the two Condors that I'm realistically probably won't make the team, but I really want them to because I love these guys. It's Josh Curry and Joe Gambardella. I honestly, truly believe that both of them at least get a start with the Oilers. Because, one, neither of them has to go through waivers to get sent down. So if they play a few games and Ken Holland decides, I want someone else, he can just send him down. Now, this is obviously assuming that Holland keeps, the full complement of, depth guys. Because you're only allowed to keep, I think, 21. Or 21 skaters and, 2 goalies. So I'm assuming that he keeps 23 guys up in Edmonton. So your defensemen are Oscar Klefbom and Adam Larson, because that's what it's been since Larson's got here. There's chemistry there. They're not objectively terrible. There are obviously better defensive pairings, on some teams' second pairing, like Nashville, because that's a great defensive core, or was when PK Subban was still there. I don't see Dave Tippett breaking that one up. Your second pairing is kind of the equivalent of the third line for the forwards, in that both of them have something to prove. Nurse is trying to prove that the contract that he recently signed was worth it for him, and that he can be a legitimate top 4 defenseman. And then Matt Benning is also looking to prove that he's not as bad as people say he is. Now, I happen to think that Benning won't be terrible. That he's a good 4 through 6 defenseman. Which, that, if he's not, you let him go when his contract is up, because, oh boy, defensive prospects are fun. And then your third pairing is Joel Persson coming over from Sweden, and Chris Russell. Now, I do not like the Chris Russell contract. I don't mind the player. I hate the contract. If that deal expires, or if that deal expires and he re-signs with us for a lesser amount, which I highly doubt will happen, I wouldn't mind it as a 7th defenseman until some of the guys in Bakersfield are very clearly ready. However, if he gets claimed in the Seattle draft, because I'm pretty sure we're going to expose him, so I don't think he has a no-move clause. Even then, I don't think he gets claimed, because that's a lot of money for a third pairing defenseman. And then your depth defenseman is Caleb Jones. Unless Evan Bouchard comes out and just puts up 25 points, some insane number for a defenseman in the preseason, it's going to be Caleb Jones, you guys. He played out of his mind last year, and I talked to some Oilers fans who saw him play, when he was up in Edmonton, and they said he looked fine. He didn't look great, but he looked fine. And really, that's kind of what you're looking for out of a first-year guy in the NHL. Play him on the third pairing and have him play fine. So, and then in net, it's pretty obvious. It's going to be Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith. I don't have Starrett up here because he still seems a little bit inconsistent to me. I think if he plays lights out like he did the back half of last year, he for sure gets the call up. And if he plays well in the backup role there, well, we might see Mike Smith get put on waivers. Now, if that happens, I don't know. Mike Smith might get sent here, because I don't know if a lot of people will want to take that risk on him. However, I'd love to see Shane stay here, for the year and win a cup. It would be really nice. So, speaking of here, let's get into the fun ones, yeah? So, your top line is Thomas Yurko with Cooper Marody and Tyler Benson. Now, Yurko, I think, is signed to a PTO this year. So that's already a I've got something to prove guy. And then play him in the AHL. That's just going to make him even hungrier. And if he plays well, he'll get called up. He's played in the NHL before. I think he played with Grand Rapids last year. So he's done both. He'll be good to have for the younger guys. And then Marody and Benson are the Batman and Robin of this team. You almost cannot have one without the other. And, look at last year. Worked pretty well. And then your second line is Gaten Haas with Ryan McLeod and Kyler Yamamoto. From what I've seen of Gaten Haas on YouTube, dude is fast. Dude is fast. And then put him with Yamamoto and McLeod, who are two guys who are also pretty fast. That could be, in terms of pure speed, that could be the top line for us, is that line of Gaten Haas, Ryan McLeod, Kyler Yamamoto. Your third line, I have the other Batman and Robin for this team last year with a rookie. I have Kirill Maximov with Brad Malone and Patrick Russell. So, Malone and Russell are defensively sound players. I think we saw that last year with them being, I think they were second and third in plus minus for the team. And playing on the penalty kill all the time. Taking a lot of the defensive zone face-offs. Those two are pretty defensively sound. That also happens to be the knock on Kirill Maximov. Sure, he's great offensively. He's got a heck of a shot. He's fast. But he's not great defensively. So doesn't it make perfect sense to put a guy who's not great at defense with two guys who are pretty good at defense, and can also put the puck in the net? To me, that makes perfect sense. Once again, you don't like it, well, it's my opinion. And your fourth line, you would expect Anthony Peluso to play if we're going to sign him to a one-year deal. However, I don't think he's going to play every game on the fourth line. I think he'll be a guy who we put in if we're going to play a team like Colorado, or Stockton, or any of the physically intimidating teams, who are going to try and bait us into some garbage. If you have that big tough meanie who doesn't need to play every game, why are you going to play him every game? If you're only going to need him for 2 or 3 teams. So I have Nolan Vesey with Cameron Hebig and Ostap Safin. Vesey, he's serviceable. He's not good. He's not great. He's not bad. He's just kind of, I guess. Cameron Hebig needs someone to help him get back to the pace he was on last year. at the start of the year. When we thought he was going to end up being the top line center, by the new year. But he dropped off and couldn't adjust. So I think Jay takes that into account and puts him on the fourth line, but also on the power play. To give him that. Play him on the fourth line to give him some weaker talent to feed on. And then you play him on the power play because he's still pretty good offensively in terms of his instincts. And then you have Ostap Safin. Now, I know some of you who will watch this video through Facebook think that Ostap is going to Wichita. Now, granted, that might be really good for him. Let him rip up the ECHL and then have him come up in the 2020-2021 season. It wouldn't be terrible for him to do that. However, I think it's a little, I don't want to say excessive, but unneeded for him to go there. Because the games I saw him play in the AHL, this would be 2 years ago now, I thought he looked okay. He looked a bit lost at times, but he also only played 4 games here. If he can use his body the smart way and also score, that could be really good for us. And you play him with a guy who can pass really, really well, and you've got probably a 40 goal scorer, in a couple years when he's adjusted to the AHL. And now we get to what I think is going to be the bright spot of the Condors. We get to the defense. So, who do I think is top pairing? I think it's Evan Bouchard and Logan Day. Now, Bouchard is, you could argue that he is above Caleb Jones on the depth chart. And I would agree in terms of potential, sure. However, he's played like 10 games in the AHL. Give him a year. Next year you look at him and say, okay, how close are you to being NHL ready this year? In 2019-2020, I think he'll be top pairing defenseman for the Condors. I think he will play on the power play and the penalty kill. And, I legitimately think he's going to be the workhorse on defense for us. If Juniors is anything to go on, I don't see how you put him anywhere but on the top pairing. And then Logan Day, who was coming off of leading the defensive core last year in terms of points, is really looking forward to having another good year this year. And I happen to think he will, but I'm also an optimist when it comes to this time of year. So I think Evan Bouchard is going to lead. He's going to lead the defensive core in terms of points, and time on ice, and shots, and almost everything. But I think Logan Day is going to be pretty close behind him. So your second pairing, I have it a little bit weird because I know a couple of you have already disagreed with this opinion that I have. I think Vinny Desharnais is going to be our second pairing defenseman. I think he will provide a really solid defensive mindset to whatever line he plays on. and that'll free up some of our better, more offensively gifted players. Much like Dmitry Samorukov, I think pairing him with a solid, defensively responsible defenseman will be really good for him. Because that'll let him learn, okay, this is how I play defense. This is how I grow defensively. Is what's he doing? How can I learn from that? So I think it'll be Vinny Desharnais and Dmitry Samorukov. Now, your third pairing is interesting because hate Peter Chiarelli all you want, but he gave us some pretty good defensive players here. And that makes it a little bit difficult to figure out who to scratch and who to send to Wichita. I think that your third pairing will be Keegan Lowe and Ethan Bear. Now, I know that there are some people who say Ethan Bear is much better than a third pairing defenseman. And most of the time, yeah, I'd agree with you. However, there were some times last year where I thought he needed to be sent down to the ECHL, to play and tear that league up, get the confidence back, and remember how he plays hockey. I really hope that he does become the top 4 defenseman that he was projected to be when we drafted him. I really do. I don't wish any Condor to fail, but I think he needs to kind of like with Cameron Hebig, he needs to get it back up here. And if he doesn't, I think this is his last year on his ELC. So if he doesn't, well, you got to let him go. Obviously, like I said, I don't want that to happen because I think his offensive instincts, especially on the power play, are going to be great for us this year. Now, this, the depth defenseman, the 7-8, if you will, is difficult for one player. It's pretty easy to scratch the other. So we'll start with that one. Brandon Manning. He's not going to play every game. I think he played 10 games all of last year. He'll be lucky not to get sent to Wichita, honestly. I'm pretty sure that if it comes to keeping Brandon Manning or keeping a guy like Dylan Wells up here, they're going to pick, literally almost anyone else. Jay Woodcroft didn't seem to like him when he was here. I don't like calling people goons, because they are still technically professional hockey players. Brandon Manning is a goon. He doesn't really provide anything else other than being a jackass to the other team, and giving them a power play. Brandon Manning is going to be scratched for 90% of the year. Your 7th defenseman is one that I don't like saying because I think he played so well last year that I don't think he deserves to be scratched. But our defensive depth is too good. It's William Lagesson. Willie played amazing last year, I thought, for a defensive defenseman. Especially as a rookie defensive defenseman. but our defensive depth is too good. You know, as I have it, it is too good. So it sucks to say he's going to get scratched, but I think he will. I think he'll play 30 or 40 games. You know, he'll be the first one to get thrown into the lineup should someone get hurt or called up. And then your goaltending is pretty clear. It's going to be Shane Starrett as the starter, with Stuart Skinner as the backup, and assuming he gets called up here, Dylan Wells is the third goalie. You know, that's what it was in the playoffs. That's what it was for most of the winning streak last year. I think that's what it's going to be this year. You know, should Koskinen or Smith get hurt, Starrett goes up, Skinner takes the starting job, and Wells gets the backup. Everyone else, you know, that's under the organizational umbrella will either go to Wichita, go to Europe, go to the CHL, or go to the NCAA. You know, or, well, I guess Sweden is part of Europe. You know, they will go to one of those four places. Honestly, this is the year that the turnaround starts for the Oilers. You know, you could argue it was last year, but I would say this is the year that we prove that wasn't a fluke, and that we also start to, you know, as Condors and Thunder, start to help the Oilers. Alright, if you liked this video, leave a comment, thumbs up, maybe a subscription if you feel like it. The camp is really close, guys, which means there's only one more month until hockey. But then, of course, you gotta deal with me more. So, some of you might count that as a win.